Hello and welcome to an episode of Lost and Found with Frankie. Today I have a really special guest on, my wonderful mum. She is someone who has just journeyed with grief far too many times and she has so much wisdom to give. We actually filmed this conversation and it ended up being so long with such good stuff in it that we have actually put it into two parts for you guys. So this first episode, we're going to be focusing on her first really big loss when she lost her dad at 21. We talk about all things about social media and how this was 40 years ago for her and how she dealt with it then, the change in family dynamics, and all of the things you take from your loved one on for the rest of your life. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to Lost and Found with Frankie, a podcast for young adults and teens who are just trying to figure out who they are whilst dealing with one of life's most devastating experiences, grief. I'm Frankie, and 10 years ago, when I was 13 years old, I lost my eldest brother, Matt. Like you're probably feeling now, I felt lost, alone, angry, and completely overwhelmed with sadness, and was just craving a space where I could go and feel comforted and understood. So this podcast is my way of creating that space for you, whilst opening up the taboo topic of grief, which so many of us experience. So if you're feeling lost on your journey with grief, hi, and welcome to this safe space. Thank you so much for being here with me today. You are not alone, and I hope that this podcast brings whatever it is that you're seeking on your journey. So let's get into it. Hi, Mum. Thank you for being here today.
You're welcome.
It really means the world for you coming on. So, it seems like a bit of a shortcut fire to the question, but we're all here today to talk about all things grief, and you are someone who has journeyed with it far too many times. So, yeah, what was your first experience with grief and how was that?
My first experience with grief was over 40 years ago when I lost my dad when I was 21 on Christmas morning.
I still now, to be honest, I think that Christmas morning, not that any loss is ever like better or worse, but that Christmas morning kind of just makes that dagger stab a little bit more with a loss like that as well. Because then every year you have the anniversary and it's meant to be this joyous, wonderful day. So I can't even comprehend how that was on the day for you. And looking back at it now, I feel like a lot of times people say, did you ever know with like sudden loss whether it was coming? It's a lot of questions I get sometimes as well. Did you have any inkling or just completely out of the blue?
It was really weird actually, because I remember going down the pub that evening with all of our friends and I was just crying all night down the pub, and everyone says, "What are you crying about?" And I said, "I don't know, just feel weird about something." And that kind of continued because when I got home, my dad was waiting for me because I was living at home at the time, because I was doing quite a bit of travelling here, there and everywhere. One of my loves of life. And he was waiting for me, which got really weird because he would never wait for me.
Yeah.
It was as if he kind of like knew. I can't explain it. It's just a feeling.
That's so bizarre. And but in a sense, like, you think to yourself, that makes it feel so much more, he wanted to say goodbye, I guess, even though he didn't know. Because how could you? It's like he wanted to have that last connection with you.
Yeah, and I now with the rest of my journey, I would say that's exactly what that moment was about, and it was the best gift. It was
weird.
Yeah.
Not really a gift, but like a nice.
Well, that's what's so crazy, isn't it?
Connection.
That moment of loss the following morning, and here I am talking about that was an amazing gift. But then that helps me hold the grief, knowing that there was that connection of us that went further than here.
Yeah.
There was more to it at that point in time.
Yeah. And how was going back to life at 21? You said you were travelling. Like, did you have travels planned or did you go into a job? Like, what was the situation at the time? How was going back to normal life?
Yeah, no, I had a lovely job in travel, which was, they were very flexible with coming and going. So I was very lucky. It was a bit of a mad, crazy job, but I loved it. So, and one of my loves in life is traveling. So I'd done a couple of trips with my girlfriend, Karen, from college. And then we were planning a bigger trip. And I think we did delay it a bit, but there was an element of, I need to go. I don't know where I need to go, but I need to do something. It's quite suffocating, and it's kind of like your whole foundation completely crumbles before you. I mean, you're not, these sudden deaths are not expected. No one teaches you how to handle it. And also not many, even, well, I don't know anybody of my friends at that point in time had lost a father. So it's very lonely. And you have to sort of like, you become a different version of who you were. You're now, a daughter that's lost their dad, and you've kind of got a responsibility for your mum, but you've also got responsibility to yourself. And looking back, I'm sure, with all my other griefs, that was quite a hard thing for my mum. That's how great her love was for me. She knew that's what I needed to do. And I will be forever grateful for her for letting me do that, because I went away for 18 months.
Yeah, it's a long time.
No phones, no social media.
It's the thing, like, that's something I also think all the time is, at that point, like obviously 40 years ago, we didn't have like FaceTime or WhatsApp or Instagram, any social media really. Like when I went traveling like a couple years ago, you and I were keeping in contact every day. About, not even about where I was, but if I was low, I could call you, we could speak about stuff. Whereas you didn't have that like level of connection then. And that must have been like, well, I was about to say that must have been really tough, but at the same time it could have been quite freeing. I don't know.
And it was. I think that's what I felt, so constricted and so consumed by such a sudden loss. 'Cause I was, I loved both my mum and dad, but I had a very different, special relationship with my dad in terms of, I don't know, we just sort of really got each other. And I used to be the why child. I'm sure most people don't have that relationship, or not necessarily have it. But my dad taught me to be curious, and we wanted me to learn about myself and the world and things. So, I knew in a way it was a kind of a connection that I had with my dad, because he always, knew I was a bit of an outside the box person. And I know that he would have loved me to have done that and not have done it just because he'd passed away. But grief isn't that simple, because you've got all the layering of, how did my mum cope? And maybe I was maybe I was running, and maybe that's okay to run and have space and breathe and have those silent moments. And funny things happen. Like I remember we were in Thailand, and we went to the cemetery where the bridge over the River Kwai is, and our surname's Lambert, and the first headstone that we saw was the name David Lambert, which was my dad's name. And Karen and I just looked at each other and thought, whoa.
I don't think I knew that. No way.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me really emotional.
It's like another connection. He's saying, I'm still around.
Yeah. But it's like a sign, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think when you lose someone, obviously everyone grieves so differently. And that's the whole point, because everyone's different and everyone's relationship to that person was different. But I know throughout sort of these like last 10 years, as other friends of mine have like lost people as well, we talk a lot more about, signs that you can either choose or not to choose to see are from that person. And that's obviously completely where you are with it. But yeah, that's just such like a him being like, I'm so glad you're traveling. And hi.
Yeah, no, it was lovely. It was lovely. But it was, it's at the same time really, really hard. Of course,
yeah.
Grief is hard. You can't ever take that away. It's exhausting.
No.
And as I said before, looking back on it now that I'm a mother of 4 children, I look back at that time obviously very differently, because I now see it not only from a daughter losing the father, which is what I was then. Now I see it, having lost a child, from a mother's point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh.
I know. It's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
And you have 2...
Yeah, 2 brothers.
2 brothers.
Yeah, I'm the one in the middle.
Yeah, middle child.
Yeah, used to get the football kicked at me from the boys at the park regularly.
Yeah. And how was that with them?
Well, Ian was in Australia, my elder brother anyway, and my younger brother was 18 months between us, so we were pretty close. But he didn't had his own experience. You know, it was very different to mine, which is as it is really, because you make choices.
Yeah.
About, he didn't go off the rails in any sort of crazy way, but he just thought sod it, because it's hard. You think, well, you become bigger and grow, or become small and too scared for life, and that's the thing, because it makes you so vulnerable. Like when Dad died, it was like my whole foundation, had gone, and it was maybe in a way that I had to start finding my own foundation. But then you're so aware that life is really fragile, and something can be taken away from any of us at any moment in time.
Yeah.
And that's quite a hard thing to carry, I think. And I
Especially
think you
at that
guys
age.
found it hard at such a young age, losing Matt.
Yeah, for sure. And I just think it just changes your whole outlook on life as a whole, but also just like every day, like how you approach every day is so different, because
for sure,
you just have a massive fear all the time. Well, I have found that anyway.
No, that's fine. Of course, you're fearful. It's a horrible thing to have experienced and to have to endure. Because, and I just kind of like wonder, I know I've thought it, looking at you guys, thinking, you have these crazy thoughts, and actually they're not that crazy, because when you start speaking to people about grief, you realize that everybody else is having the same thoughts, and it's kind of like quite normal, but because you're having it on your own, you think, oh God, am I the only weirdo that's having this thought? And then you sit with other people and you talk about it, which talking about grief is so important, and not easy, but important. And I kind of, when with you guys, I used to think, oh, I've only got like maybe 20, 30 years without Matt. And you guys being so much younger, I mean, you were 13, Frankie, being the youngest, and you have such many more years to go. You've got so much more ahead of you, and it is in a time frame. And maybe when I lost Dad and I was a 21-year-old, was I a little bit more selfish? Because I thought, I've got to, maybe selfish is the wrong word, but maybe I've got to be more, I've got to make sure, I've got a long way to go with this. So I've got to make it work somehow. Don't know how to do that, which is probably why I went traveling to, be immersed in a different world, to get a balance of stuff and see how other people were grieving. I don't know. It's just that you don't always know why you're doing what you're doing. You just have to go with what you feel you need to do at the time.
You're just trying to keep your head above the water, as they say, like, and whatever that is that keeps you there, then do it.
Yeah.
And yours was going to see the world. So
yeah, exactly.
And going back to like your siblings, do you think you came closer to them because of it? Obviously, Ian was in Australia, but do you think you became closer with Paul at the time?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
That's so nice.
Yeah. And we were pretty close family anyway. I mean, obviously, Ian was in Australia, but we're generally a close family.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Dad would love to see that anyway.
Yeah,
so
sure.
It makes you, sometimes you want to do that, not only for yourself, but for the person that you've lost.
Yeah, definitely.
If that makes sense.
Well, it's just weirdly like a nice positive that comes out of such a negative.
Yeah, I want my dad to be proud of me.
Yeah, and he is.
Yeah, oh, thank you.
I can tell you that. Well, I can't speak to him, but
no.
I think he would be.
Yeah.
I've actually always wondered, because obviously there's different losses bring such different things and different obstacles to overcome. I've always thought that with losing a father specifically, obviously you have then your wedding day and they have this, pivotal role of walking down the aisle and doing the speech. And I've actually always just wondered, like, how the hell you did that day. Because I look at my wedding day, whenever that will be, and I've always said, like, this might be so weird. But again, it might be a weird thought I'm having that actually loads of other people have. But I'm going to have like a dummy run of walking down the aisle to just like cry my eyes out. But honestly, because I just know otherwise on the day, I'm literally just going to bawl my eyes out after getting all ready. And it's just not going to be worth it. And I'm just like, I'm going to have like a dummy run with just like the family and just see that those people aren't there.
No. Yeah.
So that then on the day I can actually enjoy it for the other side of what it is. Because otherwise I just know I would just be crying.
But there's
down
nothing
the
wrong
whole
with
aisle.
tears.
No, nothing wrong with them.
Ever. They're good things, tears.
So when I say that, I think sometimes people might think, oh my God. But hey.
Well, it's quite interesting how you make things work. So obviously I never had my dad to walk me down the aisle, which was devastating. But my two brothers shared the role. And so my younger brother was very chatty and knew quite a lot of my friends. So, and then my elder brother Ian was more shy and, you know, not so at ease with doing speeches and what have you. So Ian walked me down the aisle, which was amazing and beautiful. And even for him, that was hard because he knew that he was doing a role that his dad should have done. So that would have been hard for him. And then, you know, Paul did the speeches and, you know, later on. But I just felt so, I know Dad would have been really proud of them. And I just felt so protected by them both.
Yeah.
And we grieved differently, but we were very close.
Yeah.
And so there was never any other stuff that got in the way. Yeah. You know, none of us went extreme and did anything crazy. So we were just doing our own thing, looking after each other, trying to understand why they might have done what they've done. You know, like, you know, life's too short, sod it kind of thing. Attitude was there, and that's probably not a bad thing, isn't it? Because, you know, we can all be a bit too safe and think, oh, should I do it and shouldn't I do it? And that's a positive, I think, that comes out of grief because no one knows what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
So make the most of every day.
Yeah, 100%. Like I think when I say it to sometimes people, they think it's like really morbid. And I'm like, well, we might not get tomorrow. Like tomorrow is not promised to anyone. And I think when you go through a grief, and in our cases, like sudden grief, that is literally what you're left with. Like tomorrow is literally not promised to anyone.
No.
So I think it's kind of twofold. It leaves you with a bit of like, sod it, do whatever, tomorrow's not promised. But then I think I have found this anyway, I don't know if you have, but it then kind of like leaves me at sometimes feeling a bit like more scared. Not more scared, but just like, I hope I'm making the most of every day. And then I put too much pressure on myself that day's been perfect because I've got this life that person doesn't have anymore. And I want to like prove that I've done something amazing. And it's like finding that balance of like, life's also okay if you choose to have like a couch potato day.
Oh, 100%.
You don't have to do something perfect, but also just realising that like just live in the here and now. Just do your best. Yeah. That's all you can do is just do your best.
But there's so many layers to
so
grief.
much.
So it's not that simple in terms of, you know, just say yes to everything and travel and do this and do that, because grief touches anything and everything.
Yeah.
And every single emotion, you know, it affects how it reshapes you. I don't want it ever to define me. There's a difference. I don't just want to be Debbie who lost her dad at 21. I want to be Debbie. And so I'm very mindful of that as well.
Yeah.
Of course it shapes you. I mean, I'm not the same. And I think for anybody to expect someone to be the same after a huge loss, then it's just crazy because you can't be.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, like we miss the old Debbie or like old Frankie. And it's like, but there's parts of me still there. Like a lot of me is still there, but just parts of me are just going to be slightly different. And that's okay. If anything, I'd hopefully like to say it's definitely made me a better person because you start to view not just the world differently and yourself differently, but other people differently. And you realise what matters to you. And I think that actually ends up being a positive. But it's also okay in the process of like getting there if you ever get there.
Oh yeah, I mean,
mistakes
life's not perfect, is it? And we're learning and growing all the time. You know, there's no real manual for grieving someone.
No,
it's just really important to talk about it if you can, and that's not easy for everybody. So it's just, I think the problem is society has so many expectations of how people are meant to be with grief. Like after a certain a moment or a certain amount of time, you know, you're meant to be over it, or you're should be okay now. Like you've had enough time now, Debbie. Come on. And it's kind of like, no, because that person's still not here. Yeah. My dad is still not here. You know, 40 years I've lived without him, and he was a huge part of my life. And I miss him, and I miss him till I see him again. You know, so it's not fixable. Which a lot of people want you to be fixed, I guess, because it makes it easier for them to get on with stuff, and they want you to be brave, and you are brave
Which you are
every
brave
day.
because you're living every day without that person. Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's just there is no right way to grieve. And I wish everyone understood that. It's just you have to just do what works for you whilst just trying to put good vibes out there.
Well, there's a ripple effect to grief, isn't there? So, it's not just losing someone you love and you being reshaped and having to find ways to carry on living without them, which is exhausting in itself. It's a constant thing in your life. And there's highs and lows, and there's massive triggers. When you think you're going to be triggered by something and actually think, oh, actually I'm okay.
Yeah.
And then you feel guilty that you're okay, or you feel guilty that you've forgotten the day that they passed away, and then they're probably saying to you, don't be ridiculous. Remember, the memory is not a day like that.
Yeah.
But it is quite huge. And then the opposite is, you get sort of blown away by dates that you weren't even expecting.
Yeah.
Or you might just be in a supermarket and then I see my dad's favourite biscuits or something, and then you say, oh my God, and here come the tears.
Yeah.
And it's really weird when people say, oh, I didn't want to upset you by talking about your dad. And I said, you're not reminding me I've lost him.
No.
I know
that always.
Every day. So, and it's sometimes quite hard when people don't want to mention their name, and you're sometimes desperate to talk about them because you want them. They're still part of your world. He was my dad. He'll be my dad to the day I, take my last breath. So I want him to be talked about, and I want him to be part of my world. But a lot of people are not too sure how to say or what to do.
Which I understand, because before any of us lost someone, we probably wouldn't either. But I think what I've learned with grief, and what I've slowly tried to help my friends understand, because they're constantly how can I be here for you?
That's lovely.
And also, even with us, you're how can I be there for you? And I'm there, how can I be there for you? And I think grief is about options, and just allowing options to that person of what they need in that moment. And I think it's someone could go to me, oh, I didn't want to bring them up. And it's oh, but in that moment, I was craving you bring them up. But also then it's if you bring them up and I'm really not in the mood and it's just going to make me break down in tears, even though you've brought them up, I can then shut that down, and that's my
But then you're given
decision
the choice.
Exactly.
Otherwise, the choice is taken away from you.
Yeah.
And you need to have that choice, because there'll be, obviously with your loss and Matt, there'll be days that you do want to talk about him, and there'll be days that you don't. And you won't even know which day's which.
Yeah, exactly. Which is interesting, because I would have never thought that before. Don't know what I would have thought before, but just never would have.
Exactly.
Also, the same person could be in a completely different space, 2 hours later.
Yeah.
And it's just you just need to give options. Just be what do you need? Do you want a hug?
Yeah.
Do you need to cry? Do you want me to listen? Should we go distract ourselves?
Well, because my journey with losses, I do get people obviously know my story now. So they come up and they go, oh my God, I just don't know what to do. My friend's lost somebody. And I say, just ask them.
Yeah.
Don't
assume.
Well, assumptions cause all sorts of problems, because you're making an assumption of what they're feeling or what they need, and you don't know, and they probably don't know either.
No.
But it's kind of I always say to people, just ask. Say to someone, I have no idea what to do in this situation. I've never been with someone that's lost someone they love, but I'm here for you. I'll walk with you. I'll cry with you. I'll laugh with you. I just will walk with you. And each day will be different.
And that's what means the most.
Yeah.
Because it's there are no answers. Because realistically, anyone grieving, the only thing they want is for that person back. And no one can give that to anyone. So the next best thing is just figuring out what it is they need. And I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned, which seems like we both have.
Yeah, I know.
So if you think back to that time, what advice would you give a 21-year-old going through a big loss at the moment?
It's a long time ago, 40 years. And I've had to think about it a lot, to be honest with you. But just talk to people. Because the problem is, grief is huge anyway. Then there's a ripple effect. Then there's expectations, and then it's such a muddle of so many different emotions. I just try and be you. Just try and be truthful. Just be honest, because it gets too complicated otherwise.
Yeah.
I just think, respect your grief and honour your grief.
Yeah.
They're two key words I would say to anyone at any age, and it, maybe it's harder for people around 21, teenagers, because there's so many other pressures on them at that point. They're trying to work out who they are, and who there's peer pressure, and you've got to be this and you've got to be that. And if you've got no one else that's going through the experience that you're going through, then it's really, really hard to express how you feel, because at that age, your kids are quite selfish, because they're trying to work themselves out, and that's a big enough ask in itself. So they probably don't want to know about grief, which is hard, and maybe the conversations will help change that.
Yeah.
And I think people talk more about things now.
Yeah, I definitely
I'm
think
sensing that, which I don't think was necessarily the case when I was 21.
No.
To be honest, but I was lucky. I had Karen, who I went travelling with, and she's both. She's an amazing lady, and she's a great listener, and we laughed and cried together, which I was very lucky to have that friend.
Yeah.
But it's lonely. It's really lonely. So, I think the more we can talk about it,
the better.
Yeah.
100%. Just talk. That's such a good one, actually. Just talk and just ask for help.
Yeah.
I know it's such a hard thing to do. And even me saying this now, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have. So I know it's in hindsight, it's easy looking back on that where you were then and being like, just ask for help. But just, even if you're not asking for help, just talk. Just bring it up to someone, or just.
But I think there's a whole thing around people asking for help, because everyone's meant to be, I've got it sorted, I'm fine. No, you're not fine. You've lost someone you really love. Of course you're not fine. And it's okay not to be fine. And, it's okay to look after yourself and ask for help and be vulnerable when you've lost somebody, because how can you not be? And it's, everyone said, oh, you're so strong, you're so courageous. And actually, no, I'm not really. Just trying to work it all out.
You are.
Yeah.
But I do get what you mean. It's I'm strong because I have to be.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's just.
So that would be my advice, I think. Just,
yeah.
Not everybody finds it easy to talk. I get that. And particularly, as I've said before, when you're that age, teenagers and trying to work out. But I'm still trying to work life out at 62. So there's always going to be that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And how do you think that grief shaped who you were at that time?
I don't know. I don't know the direct answer to that, actually. How did it shape me? There's different levels. I was devastated. I was just life was so vulnerable. I was scared. My foundations had gone. I was vulnerable. And they're really difficult emotions to suddenly have thrown at you in that sudden moment. And, as I said before, I was very close to my dad and we had amazing conversations. And that just completely went. And I didn't necessarily have anyone to have those conversations with. But then there were ones I had with my dad anyway. So you kind of want to keep it unique to then. But it does make you, there's crazy lessons in grief. There's alchemy in grief. You can feel the emotions and turn them into something that's good for humanity. But then at the end of the day, you'd give away all of that to have the person back in your life. But you can't have that person back in your life. So you're kind of well, what am I going to do with it now? And I think I'm talking, I don't know if I would have spoken like this 40 years ago, but looking back on that time, I probably wished I had.
Yeah.
I think. But it wasn't easy. And it was hard and it was very lonely.
But I think it's kind of in a sense quite easy to say that now.
Sure.
When you've had so much more experience and
I think there's this whole, within a family, I think there's this whole concept of, and I don't know if you guys have felt this with us losing Matt, but there's such, you just want to, you don't want to, burden's the wrong word, but you know everyone's carrying enough as it is. So you don't want to put your stuff on it. But actually, in reality, it helps all of us knowing that we're all feeling the same things and having those conversations, and it's kind of like a lot of people would say, you've got to be this for your children, you've got to be this for your mom or whatever. And I would say, actually, the most important thing is to be real. So I am okay at being happy, but I'm also absolutely devastated in exactly the same moment. That those emotions, those polar opposite emotions exist in every moment, which is quite crazy and exhausting. And it's, again, like, I remember saying to you guys after losing Matt, is I don't want to just be courageous and cool, because I'm feeling certain emotions, and I'm sure you're feeling these difficult emotions when your head's on the pillow at night, and they're dark emotions. They're really hard emotions. So if I don't share that I'm feeling them with you guys, then you think, oh God, there must be something wrong with me, because why isn't mum and dad feeling this? Because we are. So that's why the sharing and the talking is really important, because it's like a burden shared is better than doing it on your own, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, what's that saying?
I don't know. There was, I don't know.
Like a problem shared is a problem. Oh, I can't think of it
Solved
now,
or
and that's going to
something.
really annoy me. Anyway, yeah, it's so true though. And I think that's a big thing in grief when you lose someone, I think, is how like your whole family dynamics sort of changes. And obviously you've sort of had that happen twice, and it might not always happen to everyone. And not like dynamics, but just because obviously everyone's grieving differently, you'll look at stuff differently and analyze it differently, and
Sure.
some of you overthink and some of you just
I'll be
don't
one of
want
those.
to. Yeah, I'm one of those too. And it's interesting because you've had that happen in two different families.
Yeah.
One that you came from and then one that you created. Yeah. And that's one devastating, and I mean, I just don't know how you do it, to be honest. But it's also like you've learned so much.
Yeah, I've learned loads about myself. I've learned loads about other people, about myself, about life. I mean, it's been a huge journey. But, going back to being, losing dad, my brothers had to take on the role of being dad. And my younger brother was 19 and a bit. And Ian was 26, but then he was in Australia, and then he felt really bad going back, and then it was all on my younger brother. He was the only one at home when I went travelling. So there's all those
Guilt's
layers.
a weird thing with grief, isn't it?
Yeah, massive.
I mean, I feel like that could have like 5 episodes just on it.
Oh yeah, it's a deep dive into all the emotions, because it touches every single emotion really. And that would have been hard for my younger brother. My elder brother would have felt bad about it, hence the guilt. And I went off and did my thing. But there is an element of, you've got to do it all. That's why it's so exhausting. So you've got to try and be aware of the impact of what you're doing on other people that are grieving within your family unit, but you've also got to look after yourself. It's okay to look after yourself, and that in itself is quite an interesting subject, because people think, oh, you've got to put everyone else first, but actually no one knows a happy bully. So if you're happy or you're in tune with yourself, you're a much better person to be around, and then you want to share that with other people. So it is okay to look after yourself. But then there's so much guilt attached to that. And you can be up there with everyone else, basically. By looking after yourself, it doesn't mean to say you just discard everybody else. It means it's okay for you to be on the same plane as everybody else.
Yeah. And I think like you going traveling, like you could look back at that now and be like, oh, like I have so much guilt for that, going away and leaving Paul. But then actually, if he was in that time in his life, would he have done that?
Yeah.
But and you can't look at it like that, because that's what got you through at the time.
Totally. I don't think I would have been very different now than I was if I hadn't done that. There might have been resentment that would have been sort of like pulled into that. Oh, I didn't go away because I had to stay and look after mum or whatever. And there was my mum never did that to us, and that's been a massive gift she gave me. She knew I needed to do it, even though I know she was struggled massively with me going, and being a mother of having had my own family, 4 children, losing a child, I now I understand my mum more, and that's why I thought, wow,
Yeah.
What a gift. She let me do what I needed to do. And that's a mother's love.
Yeah. But I actually think it's so incredible that you look at that and you don't go, God, what a crap daughter I was that I just left my mum. Now having been through being a mum of children and lost a child, you've looked at it in a completely different way, in such a positive way, and actually taken a positive from that, going, wow, what an amazing mum I had at that time. And that's so nice.
Finding a positive from it rather than negative. I see what you mean.
Because you so easily could have gone, why did she never tell me? And God, that was so awful of me. I can't believe I did that to her. But also, what good do you gain from that? Do you know what I mean? It's done, it's gone, it's happened.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing as well. Like, don't stress about what you can't change, what's been and gone. Like, try and take
learn
that
from
positive.
it.
Yeah, just like learn from it.
Don't load yourself with more negative emotions. Just learn from it each and every time.
Yeah.
Because that's life, isn't it?
Yeah, but that just like makes me smile.
Yeah.
That you look at it like that.
Nice.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode with my lovely mum. If you're wanting to follow on with this lovely conversation we have for part 2, when we talk about her second big loss and our joint loss of losing my brother and her son Matt, then come back next Monday and we'll be getting into how it affected our relationship, what we've learned from each other, and how we carry that grief together. Thanks so much. See you soon. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Lost and Found with Frankie. If it's resonated with you, or if you've taken something from this episode, or if you've just sat down and enjoyed it, I'd be so grateful if you could rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Hit that follow button, and if you're watching me over on YouTube, please give it a like and subscribe. I really want to reach as many young people and teens who are dealing with grief, as I know firsthand how much hearing conversations like this can help. So if you know someone who could benefit from what we've talked about here today, please give it a share with them too. And come say hello on Instagram and TikTok at Lost and Found with Frankie. So thank you again for being in this space here with me, and I'll see you next time.